Hey, it's me, John Ward. I am back with another One Filmmaker, One Film. And today my guest is...
My name is Roger Connors. Hi, everybody. I am a filmmaker and an actor based out of Cleveland, Ohio. I've been doing this for about 15 years now. I've worked on an array of independent films, mostly in front of the camera, but within the last few years, I have finally stepped behind the camera, and I recently released my directorial debut, which is a feature-length film entitled Rebirth, which just came out a few weeks ago on all major streaming services.
And that is what we are here to talk about, Rebirth. And I'll put a link down to those streaming services in the comments in the or in the description in the area down below. So thank you. I appreciate you being here. I really do. And I'm a big fan of this film, as I've told you. And so I'm really happy and honored to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very flattered that you would have me, and I appreciate you being invested in my film and supporting it. And this early on, I really appreciate it. And I'm very thankful that you're having me as a guest. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you. So let's first start with how did you come up with this film? And then why did you make this film?
Well worded, because the conceptualization of the film was very different from the execution of the film. I've always been a diehard Romero fan, going back to childhood. This Night of the Living Dead was the first horror movie I remember seeing. I remember very specifically, I was 7 years old. My grandfather had a VHS of it. I was always really obsessed with it, and I always wanted to watch it. And so finally he gave in and let me watch it, and it traumatized me, and that stuck with me. And that trauma turned to curiosity, turned to infatuation. And I'd always just really thought that it was a very effective, simplistic story that could be interpreted in a lot of ways. And as I became older and really started to understand the nuances of the film and the social commentary that Romero was so good at layering into his cinema, there's always so much more to his films than meets the eye. I appreciated it that much more. And so I knew in my 20s, I really wanted to make a film that tackled modern day social commentary in a similar vein. A lot of modern day social commentary is the same social commentary it was in 1969, unfortunately. But I really wanted to make something that echoed that and touched on that same approach of, of a horror movie with a lot more to it than just being something scary. Night of the Living Dead wasn't just scary because of the zombies. It was scary because of the people and what the threats they pose to each other, And so I was conceptualizing it for a few years in my 20s, and I moved to Columbus, and things didn't really work out. Moved back home, and I needed something to get me back into my passions and something to really kind of ignite my love for filmmaking again, because I had taken a break for a couple years at that point, and I was like, you know what, now's the time. And I'm happy we made it when we did, because after we finished filming it and so forth, and we're still in the midst of editing, the topics we touched on in that film became a lot more relevant within the last few years. So I'm happy we made it when we did, and I'm happy we waited for as long as we did, because I feel that social commentary rings that much truer in 2021.
Well, and that's what I noticed while watching it, especially a second time, is with one of our characters in there, who's the Cooper character, is kind of harkens the last administration that was in the White House, at least in my opinion. So it's one of those things where it looks like you were kind of tackling religion and politics with racism, and which I think in the original film, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not entirely sure if Cooper is a racist or not against Ben, because he wants everybody to go down to the basement. He's just like, no, we need to get down there. Never does he say, don't bring this guy down. He's not one of us.
Right.
He might be, he might kind of be like a, an angry white guy, but he's at least he didn't come off that way to me as just being like a flat out racist. But with and of course it's Reverend is what you have, this Harry Cooper character as. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and especially with some of the word choices that were used, and with him definitely, the N word and a couple other things that he says is you're not too unhappy with him, or you're not sad with what happens to him later, because he is such a horrible person, and these people, you want them to die the worst way possible. So, and of course that's not spoilers, because if you've seen the original film, he does die in the original film. So it's I found that to be interesting, and it's so I have to ask, what time period does the film take place in? Because I've noticed some modern cars when they go into like an auto shop that I thought was pretty cool, but overall dial-up phone, old school radio, things like that. I don't believe there's any cell phones or anything in this. So what's the time period?
So my goal with the film was I wanted it to feel very much preserved in I wanted to feel kind of timeless. Like I wanted to have elements of modern day. Like in the opening, you see my character Adam take out his cell phone and snap some photos of his grandmother's tombstone.
Yeah.
But once they get into the house, the farmhouse, I wanted it to feel very much the same vein, the same vibe as the original film, which was isolated and removed from society. And right now, removed from society is also removed from technology. So everything within the house, the farmhouse, is actually from the 1960s. All of the appliances, everything is from the era of the original film. You also notice that the car that we use for John's car in the opening of the film is very similar to the model from the original movie. We wanted to have a lot of things that felt like hat tips to not only that movie, but that era as well. And so even down to like the trench coat that my character wears is very Barbara-esque, So I wanted it to feel very preserved in time. It would be modern day if we're saying the actual, time period that's in, but I didn't want it to be bombarded with that kind of imagery or that kind of technology. I wanted that kind of stripped away.
Yeah, because the actor who plays Johnny is all tattooed up. He's got the beard. He's very modern day looking, but yet, like you say, the car, the technology that's in the house, all that is from long ago. I mean, there's, they have no way of communicating really. Even the TV, looks like it's something from like, the 50s or the 60s. So it's that I thought was pretty cool. And And I like some of the things. Well, okay. So you'd mentioned like your coat that you wore, you said was very like Barbara-esque. So that's something that I wanted to ask you about. So you play the character of Adam, who is basically Barbara from the original film. And in most movies, the director, in your case, writer and director, well, you did multiple jobs on this film, would play the big Rambo gun-toting guy who's shooting, all the zombies and running throughout the house. Pure ego of the director. You chose to play the Barbara character. Why did you kind of choose to mix that up?
I think well, first of all, I think the Barbara character gets a really bad rap. I've heard a lot of people who, say, she's how weak she is, and she's a very stereotypical portrayal of a classic female stereotype, that damsel in distress. And I get that to a certain extent, but I also think when you look at like the original film has almost a newsreel quality to it, the way it's filmed, the grittiness of it. It's very realistic in the sense, like you said, there's times you feel you're just in the moment. And that's kind of a testament to Romero and his team and how well they captured that, and I think Barbara, at least how she's played by Judith O'Dea, is a very strong portrayal of somebody who is experiencing trauma and not coping. well. And I think a lot of us want to think that we would be the Rambo, that we would be the Patricia
Right.
Tallman Barbara from the 1990 Savini remake, and which is an amazing take on it. And I love like the whole like almost like Ripley approach that they took with Barbara with that. But I think at the end of the day, there's something to be said about individuals who do not process trauma, who do not process stress in the moment, who do not cope well. And my whole goal with the character of Adam was to take, while he is not Barbara, he is very much the character who is not coping well and doesn't necessarily have the survival tools of, you know, maybe like a Ben or some of these other characters that you see, because he was very much presented to be an upper class rich white boy who's, you know, he's a gay boy who hasn't been through anything. And, you know, not saying that he hasn't been through anything in the sense of something traumatic like a massive invasion and defending
Right.
himself, you know, and throwing him into this in the middle of nowhere, not knowing people, the trauma that you know that would inflict on somebody. I don't think people would always be reactive to grab a weapon and defend themselves. I think a lot of people would break down, and that's not necessarily a bad thing or a weakness so much as just how the brain processes trauma. So I wanted to keep that aspect because I think it's one of the more terrifying elements of the original film is the character that can't handle it.
Yeah, I think that you're right, and I'll even go a little further. Is I think most people would be Barbara. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
they would be Rambo. I think that when you get these, you know, Second Amendment people, militia people, you get all these, you know, the guys who get the guns and they have, you know, an entire room dedicated to them, and they're just like, you know, we're just waiting for this, you know, for the war to start, and you know, oh, if a zombie came after me, I'd kill it instantly. I don't think any of that. I think that they would be terrified, even holding a gun. And I'll go as far as saying for something like a school shooting or a movie theater shooting, I think most of these guys would be terrified. And when they did pull out their gun, they would probably shoot the person that's standing right in front of them. So
Yeah.
I think that more people are Barbara than they are, let's say, Ben, because
Yeah.
it's, you know, we like to have a big talk. Oh yeah, if that person did that to me, I would just punch him in the face. Most of us just stand there stunned at what somebody is just saying to us, you know,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
just words.
Yeah.
So
It takes a minute for the brain to catch up with anything,
yeah,
let alone to see a family member killed in front of you. Like, keep in mind the journey of Barbara. You know, people, again, she gets a bad rap, but if you think of what happened, she escapes multiple situations alone. She defends herself consistently throughout the film as she needs to. And yeah, she shuts down when she's in the presence of other people. But even at the end, during like the final siege in the house, she snaps to it. She helps Helen. You know,
right.
she's not incapable. She's just, you know, not responding in the moment the same way everyone else is. And one thing I will say about Adam's character and what my goal was is while he was in shock, he also defends himself multiple times over the course of the movie and has the second highest kill count of zombies in the movie. I mean, other than Ben, he really does. He kills multiple zombies in defense just because he has to, but he can when he needs to. He just doesn't know why it's happening, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you say in this version, zombies are known? Like, are there zombie movies and books in this version of the film, or are these just brand new things that we've never heard of?
You know, I would say that this was a world where the pop culture zombie as it is would exist because I think one of the reasons I wanted to take a slightly different approach with what the zombies are and how they're presented is because I didn't want just another Romero zombie. We've seen a lot of different takes on the zombie, and I knew that I wanted it to be something where like I knew a bit about the backstory, even if you don't hear it in the movie. I knew that I wanted it to kind of lean on the lure that you're given in the original Night of the Living Dead. You get a few sentences about the Venus probe going up to space with the radiation. It comes back, they blow it up, and it gets into the atmosphere. I was like, okay, well, if this is an alien, let's go off the idea that maybe this is not man-made, this is alien. What are some other classic sci-fi, body horror, other genres that kind of branch off of that I can lean into and take influence from? That's not just the Romero Shambler, but the glowing eyes, demons, A lot of that was influenced from the movie Demons.
Oh,
Other
great
films
movie.
dealing with the
Yeah.
possession of the body. Great movie. Occasionally you'll
Both
see the
actually.
pulsing veins and things. Yeah, I agree. I love both Demons movies. But you'll see like the pulsing veins on a few of the zombies too, and that's very much in the idea of a movie like oh god, like Cronenberg Shivers, maybe like of yeah, almost like a parasitic kind of idea that whatever is causing this to happen, there's something more to it that may or may not be necessarily of this world. So that's why I kind of lean into a sci-fi element, because I don't think it's a Romero zombie. It's kind of its own thing, but it displays that whole cannibalistic tendency.
Okay. And to let people know, we are going to be talking spoilers. So, there's going to be a link down below. So to check out the film if you want to watch it first and then come back. Otherwise, you're being warned. We are discussing spoilers. But because there's a lot of good stuff in this film that I want to talk about, but I'm not going to talk about everything because I do want to leave some stuff up to people to seeing, when they actually do watch it. So, when you started thinking of I want to make this film, did you first it's called Rebirth, not Night of the Living Dead Rebirth,
right?
Or Rebirth of the Living Dead or anything like that, right? Why just Rebirth but not include the of the Living Dead or anything?
Completely transparent. Image 10 contacted me, one of the Striner brothers, the original producers of Night of the Living Dead, and they started asking me some questions about the production. And at that point, I mean, let's be real. I know what's going on. There have been a crap ton of Night of the Living Dead remakes, and not everybody's happy about it. And I completely understand why. And I want to be as respectful as possible, and I want to honor whatever I need to honor to make sure that it's palatable for the original filmmakers and the fan base. Because if the fan base is not happy, if the original filmmakers are not happy about it, then I've already got one strike against me, and the whole reason I'm making this movie is because it's my favorite film. It really is. Night of the Living Dead is my favorite film. So when they started talking, I basically said, listen, this is a production that is an $8,000 budget. This is out of pocket. This is not, I don't see
not to interrupt, but
being...
this was only $8,000.
Yeah. At the time of filming, everything we did some miniature pickups with the truck explosion with miniatures and things for additional footage. But yes, the actual production was $8,000.
Oh, wow. I thought it would be much higher. So it looks like a much higher film. So sorry, don't mean to interrupt. I'm just kind of shocked by that.
No,
so, okay.
Yeah. I'm happy about it. We did one Indiegogo. We did an Indiegogo to finish the production, and at that time, I was very green. I had not directed a feature at that point. This was all locals, and we made maybe like $580 at the time. So honestly, other than that, it was all out of pocket. But I was very transparent with them, and I told them, this is my goal, this is my intention, and whatever I need to do for you to be okay with this project, whatever it is. And if you're not okay with it, tell me. And they said, listen, as long as it's the name that really gets us. When people rely on the name and capitalize off the name for profit, that's where it's problematic. And I was like, okay, well, it's called Night of the Living Dead Rebirth. I don't have to use any of that. And I'm happy to just call it Rebirth. I think that that's fine for me because it's influenced by Night of the Living Dead. It's retelling the story, but I want it to be able to stand on its own two legs in a 2021 scenario. And that's fine. I mean, if that's going to make it something where that appeases them, then yeah, I don't care. I'm happy to know that I have their blessing with it,
Well, and it's weird because, some people say Criterion now owns the rights to the original. Some people say it's still public domain. And obviously there's a lot of, Dawn of the Living Dead is an actual title to one of the films. And then you have all those remakes, sequels that aren't legit sequels.
Right.
And then you got the remakes.
3D.
You got a little bit of everything out there. So and from what I understand too, is that Romero got really mad when all the other guys were making was it Flesh Eater, and they were
Bill Hinzman.
yeah, since nobody was really making money off of this because it was public domain because of that little copyright
Yeah,
symbol, they were just trying to
yeah,
make their money off of it, and that George Romero got really upset with them. And it's just like, George, we're just
yeah.
trying to do our own thing here. So it kind of seems
Mhm.
like there's been problems with this since day one. And but
Yeah,
other
I mean, that
people,
copyright situation.
oh no, please.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame with that. I mean, honestly, in the overall situation, in the sense that they're just not seeing what's due, even from profits that have already been made. Remakes aside, I mean, the original film has been released and re-released and re-released and re-released, and once they have the Criterion remaster, I know that is copywritten. The remastering of the footage, that specific cut, I believe, is copywritten. But I mean, even within the last few weeks, Night of the Living Dead, Night of the Animated Dead just got announced, which is, and it has some bigger names. Catherine Isabel is playing Barbara, so there's that. And then there is Night of the Living Dead 2 that just got announced, which I
Right.
believe is actually a follow-up to Day of the Dead. And then there's another Night of the Living Dead that's being worked on with Vivica A. Fox. So that's 3 films using that title within the next shooting within this year, apparently. So I'm one of many to retell it. I'm one of many to retell the story. And if my title change is the only thing that really differentiates it, then I'm fine with it. I'm fine with that.
Well, yeah, in a way, I'm almost glad that it doesn't have the full title. I kind of just like Rebirth. And even your credit sequence at the beginning, I liked how the car's kind of moving down the road, and behind it, it says Rebirth, and the car's cutting off the title. I even thought
Mhm.
that was cool with like the red lines coming down.
Thank you.
So, oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm a big title person. So if you don't grab me with those titles at the beginning, you've kind of lost to me. And
Yeah.
so I think maybe Rebirth is just the better way to kind of do it. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the big reason that I was okay with the title adjustment in general is because Rebirth kind of perfectly sums up a few things about the movie. It's a rebirth of a classic story that's been told over multiple times, but it's being approached from a fresh contemporary viewpoint. It's also in the approach of the ghouls in our film when the bodies are quote unquote reborn. I mean, it is so whatever is happening to these corpses, they are coming back to life. There is a rebirth happening. It's not a good rebirth. It's not a spiritual rebirth. It is a violent rebirth, but
right.
it
Oh yeah,
applies in the situation. I think it
yeah.
applies well. So yeah.
So with your, so now that we know what the budget is, tell me a little bit, what was pre-production like? Like how long did it take? What exactly went on with pre-production?
Pre-production was pretty great, to be honest. I had worked with Noel Bai on a film called Chill the Killing Games. Prior to this, it was a slasher. Had a good experience. Female cinematographer who had a really strong eye for really nice aesthetics. And one thing I knew I wanted with this movie was, aside from being, kind of set in that era that feels kind of 60s but kind of modern, I wanted the cinematography to reflect that as well. And so you'll see there's a lot of 60s and 70s inspired shots. Even the color palettes, the reds are very saturated. There's some of those slow zooms and so forth, a lot of fluid sliders. I knew that I wanted it to have that kind of vintage style to it, the cinematography, and I knew she'd be a good fit for it. Unfortunately, Noelle retired not long after this project. She did a few more and retired, but God, she could shoot, man. She had a really good eye for the camera. But honestly, pre-production was just finding a lot of locations that really resonated and felt true to the story. And the house, I was very lucky to find someone who lived in a house that was completely stylized of the era. Like that house was decorated. That the farmhouse is technically, the interiors are 2 houses. The large majority, like the staircase that I go up with the knife and everything, with the red walls, the whole house They decorated it to feel like it's in the 1960s, down to the magazines on the tables, the TVs, everything. I didn't have to do a lot of work, and that was really a blessing. The cemeteries, you know, we filmed in about 3 different cemeteries for the overall collected footage and so forth, but just finding locations that kind of just spoke to the story and felt authentic. And that really kind of like charged us, because we knew what we wanted, but that really charged our batteries. So by the time we got to production, we were ready to go, and we knew what we were trying to do. And yes, we had a very small budget, but like I was very lucky. I had a used clothing store called Penny Pinchers that all of their clothing that was basically getting tossed away due to damage. Zombies need damaged clothing. They gave me all of it.
Oh,
All of
yeah.
it. I costumed 100 zombies. I costumed everybody. I gave everybody a costume. Like nobody, like people could be like, I can bring my own stuff, but I didn't expect anyone to bring any of their wardrobe for that. We destroyed and damaged and, you know, dipping clothing in coffee overnight, so it had that really like grungy look to it. You'll also notice that the women, like I didn't want any women in pants. I only wanted dresses because I wanted it to feel rural and again kind of preserved in time. So I was really lucky just to have a lot of people who are eager to make a zombie movie. Lots of people like zombie movies, and if people have the chance to participate, they literally come out in droves, like figuratively and literally, they come out in droves.
Oh, that's great. And so you're, because I noticed that there's a fair amount of locations compared to the original film. So in the original film, there was just the house, there was the pump, and you know, the cemetery, yeah, stuff like that. But like the main location, you have, you know, the house, the Adam character runs past a totally abandoned house. And then there's this kind of like, now what I got from the second viewing was the auto shop that they go to in it is the pumps from the first film, because that's where they're getting the gas, yes, from. And yes, was that 2 different locations? Was the auto, because I noticed they go past like a whole bunch of cars and then they go into the auto place, or is it the same?
So the auto repair shop was, it was a combination of 2 locations, but the one location that we used for the majority of the exterior of the farmhouse, it worked really well. They had a barn, and next to the barn, they had a bunch of RVs. And I was able to really kind of fluidly transition that over to the auto repair shop because they had a bunch of vehicles outside of there as well. So it looks like kind of one fluid transition of me running through all those RVs and finding the pickup truck. The pickup truck was by the farmhouse. The auto repair shop was its own location, but it does flow really, I think, pretty seamlessly because of just the similarities in the locations in general. It worked really well for us, luckily.
Did you, was it written into the script that it was like an auto repair shop, or did you just happen to come across it?
Yes, I knew I wanted, in the original script, I wanted a gas station. Because you'll even hear, there's a piece of dialogue where they say that Judy works at the gas station. So I wanted to expand upon the location of the pump, just because I did want to have my own moments in my film that felt completely authentic and not inspired by moments within the original Night of the Living Dead. And so I knew I wanted to have a few additional locations, and the big one I really wanted was this gas station. And when I was looking for that, I luckily had someone come forward who granted access to this great auto repair shop. And I mean, the auto repair shop, there's actually a few scenes that were cut from inside of there as well. It was really just a cinematic location. It was great. And so a few of my favorite sequences are in there. But I mean, the movie, we cut about 50 minutes from the movie. Like, we cut a lot. And there's a few really good sequences in that repair shop. But yeah, no, I'm really happy that we got, you know, it feels like there's a world outside of that farmhouse, and you get to see a bit of it.
Yeah, there's a shot that I really like is the camera is kind of looking down from the house, and you just see Adam running through the field, and there's the zombies are just kind of throughout the field, and kind of runs just around them, you know, as he goes away. And it cracked me up a second time when I saw that, because it's just him just running. There's the zombies, him just running away. It's a great shot. I mean, it's very funny. I can see that in like a promotional still. So that cracked me up.
Yeah. they did use that in the trailer, and the funny they did it like a suspenseful like like pushing on the trailer. But like listen, my character has a very gay run. Like it's you know, it's it's the character, but it is one of those moments like in the movie because he's so out of his element. Like this kid does not know how to defend himself. He doesn't know how to run in those boots. Like he's not prepared, you know, and that's the vibe I wanted with Adam. So and so specifically we approached that aspect of the character very specifically. So for that sequence, I just want he's just booking it. Like he knows they're everywhere, but like where else is he gonna go? You know?
They're slow enough, but he, you know, he can still run around him, and yeah, it's very funny. So during what was your production time like then?
Okay, so this is another thing. Okay, let me be clear. This is my first feature directorial debut. This is my first time directing. I've AD'd on a few films, but overall I had not helmed a project myself. So we started filming this movie in 2015. And we got through production, editing it in like 2017, 2018 rolls around, and my editor had a pretty serious computer failure, and I was not aware that the entire film was backed up on one hard drive.
Oh,
so the movie was at one point I thought lost. I had a massive spiral. I was in a deep depression, but she sent it out to get salvaged, and the salvage company that received it was able to save about 80% of the film, though the cut of the film was lost. So the whole edit's gone, but the footage, 80% of the footage is there, but that means 20% was not there. So, and then at that point she retired from filmmaking. So I'm up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. I hope I can swear on this because that's really what it was, but I'm sorry. So and at that point I did not think, I didn't think the movie was going to get finished, you know. I had worked on a lot of films at this point, but when it came to the digital destruction aspect, a lot of people didn't want to touch it because a lot of the footage was fused together. A lot of the film would digitally disrupt and cut to a different clip. Like things had to be like surgically removed, like pieces had to be separated. So luckily I became acquainted with two editors, a team here in Cleveland, behind Disposable Entertainment, Malachi Polte and Michael Coons, who are both amazing guys, and they had seen parts of the project and they knew there was promise and that the film was executed well. They just knew about this issue, and they kind of specialize in disposable entertainment. They fix the projects that had been tossed away. And so I was like, I would really like it if you look at this footage and see what you can do. And they saved the movie, but it took 5.5 years.
Oh, wow. So when you're saying that a percentage of the film is gone, is it like gone? Like there are scenes that we will never see, or? Oh, yes. Wow.
Yeah, there's more like shots. There's like I mean, the footage that was lost was like random shots. It was based off like the number coding and everything. So there's like a few moments that were really actually big moments that were now reduced to just like small sequences, which is really difficult. Like an example, like the sequence where Ben's pounding on the door to get inside, and Rachel Anderson, who plays Helen, and Elvin Hudson sliding across the floor. The whole sequence of Ben outside was a whole scene. Big scene of zombies starting to just appear out of the darkness, coming up the staircase. He runs out of bullets. But the only clips of that, two angles survived. And it was a low angle and a wide shot of him slowly pushing in on it, but none of the action survived. So we had to kind of like reduce it to cutaway footage. So that was difficult. You know, that was difficult. We also had footage of him responding to the truck explosion. And that didn't survive. Things like that, that I think, you know, I know would have amplified certain moments. So for me, it's like, I'm always like that, what if, I wish I could have had that. There's always going to be a few of those scenes that I'm like, oh, I know what the potential was, you know, but man, I'm just thrilled that, yeah. But you know what, man, what they did with the movie and how it stands now, I'm so proud of it. The experience was rough. It was exhausting, but I look at what I have. I'm so thankful. I know how hard the people worked, everybody, to get it to what it is. So it's the gift and the problem. I use that term a lot. Yeah, there was a huge problem, but my gift was that I worked with these two guys that really amplified the movie and took it to a whole other place. And because of them, I have the movie as it is now, and I love the movie as it is. So everything happened for a reason.
So that's a warning out there to all, filmmakers.
Yes.
Does not matter if you're a beginner or what, just
Right.
always back it up on 2 hard drives, and or even just, if even if you have that the little chip that goes into the camera where, that has footage on it too, keep that. Because I had a similar experience is when I made Aximus 2, my original editor, Matt, he didn't keep anything. When he was done with the film, it's like, here's your stuff. It's all yours now. And I had it on 1 hard drive. The film was completed. It was done. So I had copies of the film. Yeah. But I had the tower was sitting like that. My cat knocked it like that. That little motion knocked that needle off, and it was broken. And I was they're able to, up in Northern California, they said, oh yeah, it's still there, we could retrieve it for you, but it's going to cost $3,000 for you to get all that footage back. And and it's like, the film only cost me like $600. Do I really want to pay, and I do have a completed film. So, one day when I'm rich and famous, I guess I can always send it up and get that footage back if I need it. But it's, you got to back it up on at least 2 hard drives, and then take that 1 hard drive, put it into a box with a bunch of stuffing, and put it in your closet, and don't touch it. Just leave it there.
Preserve it in glass, keep keep it on a shelf somewhere. Yeah, no, it was, it was one of those harsh realities that it was a learning curve, man. It's one of those things. I'm happy I know it now. I certainly wouldn't make the same mistake again. I was green as can be. And I had not been humbled yet. I think it's very important as an indie filmmaker to know who you are, know what you're making, which is a low budget movie, and at times to be humbled. Being humbled is the best thing that can happen to you, because then if you have a mistake, if you're even somewhat competent, you will not make that mistake again, because that's going to risk you a lot of money you don't have. It's going to risk you time that you can't afford. When you have people donating their time and coming out and helping you make your vision a reality for little to nothing, that time is precious. So when you have an experience like this and you see how much time was lost, I will never make that mistake again. So, like I said, the gift and the problem.
Yeah, it's Matt, my editor, he said 50% of filmmaking is problem solving. So it's, and which is 100% true, because if you've never directed a film, if you've never written a film, if you've never produced a film, it's not easy. It's absolutely not easy. And especially with today's technology, if that cat just knocks it over, that's it. You've lost years of work, and you're on your hands and knees, please still be there. And in your case, you were lucky. You got, like you said, you got 80% of that back. And it's, to me, the film's complete. It feels complete. It doesn't feel like there's anything missing. It feels like that's just how it's supposed to be, which is good. So it works on an audience. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And even coming down to the aspect, like I said, there's 50 minutes of the film that didn't make the final cut. And I'm sure you understand this, again, as an indie filmmaker, when you're making a cut for a distributor or you're trying to get it seen by the right people, there's certain things certain guidelines you try to stick to. And we wanted to get to that magical 90-minute mark, And if I could have my own way, I'd have a 2-hour, 20-minute long movie. But who am I? I'm Roger Cotters. I've never done it. so my goal was really to make the most mainstreamified indie film I could. I wanted it to feel like, even though it's a $8,000 budget, I wanted it to at least have moments where people feel like, wow, they really were striving to make it feel like you're watching a bigger budget production. I'm always trying to amplify what I have. I may not have a ton of money, but through the magic of cinematography and the talent of my cast and crew, I mean, every once in a while you hit the nail on the head, and you do create a moment that really feels right, you know?
Did you ever think to go back and reshoot the stuff that's missing?
We had to do a few. We had to do a few. And it's funny because, I mean, I'll be completely honest. When I filmed the beginning of this movie, I was a svelte 175 pounds. And there are points in the movie where like my weight gain goes like, whoop. Like you see like if you look really close, or even like my hair, like it's just one of those things. There's a few times that like my hair is off, and that's because a few of those things that we lost, we couldn't get away without, you know? So, like one of the examples, one of the moments that is additional footage that we picked up is the whole sequence of Helen, Rachel seeing me at the door when all the zombies are like coming through the door, and she like sees them and she starts backing up. That was all pickups just like spliced in there. But luckily, like with the flow of the movie and the energy of the movie, I don't think you really tell when the pickups are, because it kind of just like it moves at a pretty consistent pace, and when it finally hits towards the end, it's so like it's pretty like, you know, suspenseful. I think for at least on this level, I think we did a good job with that, so I don't think a lot of people will catch those pickups.
Did you have as far as the zombies go, did you have any sort of like zombie school or like key zombies that you wanted to see in front of the camera?
So I mean, I knew with the style of zombie, like I knew I didn't want runners. And I like a running zombie. Some people are weird about it. I like them both, but I knew that at least for this movie, it didn't make sense. So I knew that like I was lucky. I was really lucky that I had a really competent makeup team. And so as I started to see certain people in makeup, because we did do some trial makeup sequences, I kind of started realizing like, okay, I have like the cemetery zombies, the guy with the long hair. I was like, this guy he has the right look. His name is Donald. He has the look. So, and actually, he did not originally get cast as that zombie, but he was on set one day as an extra, and he was just so into it and so right in that role that I was like, you know what, this is the right guy. So you can actually see him in about 2 shots in an like in an alternate outfit, like in a robe, which is, you know, just typical like classic indie filmmaking, but it's the same guy. He's so obvious. I can't believe we like went along with keeping that footage in the movie, but it was a good shot, so whatever. But yeah, so it was a lot of it was just kind of off certain people's body language. You know, there's certain zombies within the movie there's one who, when I'm like freaking out and the girl in the blue robe like appears and half of her face is mauled off, I was like, there's just something about her body language. She's perfect for this moment. So I think what it was really cool is I had a lot of people come out of the woodworks who were so devoted to the craft of being a zombie that I had a wide pool to pick from. I had overall over 100 zombies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they did a good job, because on some films, I don't even think they bother really showing them what to do. They kind of walk like the Frankenstein monster from like Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, with just the hands straight out, and they're kind of doing this walk, you know, like that type of thing. And I did notice the guy he's got like the beard, the long hair that hung down, and I'm thinking like, that's one of those zombies that they want in front of the camera. And but I didn't think any of them did a bad job. I thought, okay, they're doing it good. That one's dragging a foot, that one's limping, that you even had he might have been like a little person, maybe he was like missing the arm.
So that is actually somebody who is he's restricted to a wheelchair. He has I'm trying to think of the right terminology for it. So basically his situation has it so that he has a hand here and a hand here. His arms are not fully developed. And you're talking about the garage sequence, correct? Like where he has like the arm piece moving. So he literally has a hand here, but no arm extension. So what we had our makeup team do was build him like a mauled lump of where his arm was. And so he literally had a joint piece where he could, I mean, or he had a joint here with his hand where he could just move it like this. So that's all practical effects. Everything on that zombie, other than the eyes, everything to do with his wounds, practical. We do have some digital. The blood behind him is actually digital, but because we couldn't get blood on the walls of that location. So unfortunately we were like, had to go in, but I actually thought that blood turned out pretty good.
Yeah, I was thinking, the house that you were shooting in, was that just like a friend's house, or you were location looking? You know, how did that come about?
You know, one thing I will say, like as a gay man, I'm very lucky that I have a lot of very flamboyant friends, and so when I've like needed like lavish locations, I've been pretty lucky. And so my friend Sean is the one who lives in this very beautiful home, but it's a suburban home. But the interior of it is completely decorated that way. But the farmhouse itself was actually altogether 4 houses combined. The interior was 2 houses. And so there's like the living room area with those wooden sliding doors. And that like extends, and when we cut over, it would cut to the kitchen, which that was another house. And the kitchen, the dining room, and the staircase were a separate house. So we just filmed it so it looked like it was a big loop that you'd walk around. We just got lucky with the layouts being similar. But then the exterior was 2 separate with 2 real farmhouses. And the one was long, but it was thin. And the other one was like, from the front, it looked perfect, but it was just too small. So from all the front shots of the house, the 2-story shots, it's 1 farmhouse. The other long shots of the house, separate farmhouse, they just had the exact same siding. So we just tricked it.
Yeah. And the so I'm imagining with that house, you had to, because if blood splatters, you probably, that was not on his wall, I'm taking it.
No. So there is very limited blood you'll see in the interiors. Mostly I have respect for that location. But there is a scene where I find the woman up at the top of the staircase and she gets dragged away. There's a blood splatter there. That's digital. Other than that, the kitchen, we could get bloody. So when I beat the zombie with the crowbar in the kitchen, I mean, that's all real. But anything within anything within the nice areas of the house, we weren't looking to disrespect the people. That's why we kept a lot of the violence and the gore to the cellar footage, because it was cement floors. It was a different house, that's 5 houses now. So that was a different house, but that we were able to get that one messy, and messy we got it.
And what about the auto repair place, the car auto repair place? You could get bloody?
Certain areas, but so if you notice the scene where you find the zombie with the arm piece, there was a car in there that was actually like about to get painted, and I loved that it was there, because if you notice all the cars, we walk through all the cars in the auto repair shop, and they're all shells. You know, there's one that's up on a lift, but they're all in the middle of being worked on. None of these cars operate, and that's why there's the shot of me like running my fingers over it, so you can see really that these cars are kind of gutted. But the one car was in there to be repainted, so they didn't want any blood in there because there's this really fucking expensive car. So in that area we digitally added the blood. All the blood around the zombie with the arm piece, it's all digital. But there's a few moments in there where you see some blood that is all authentic. Anywhere we could keep it practical effects, we did.
And with the cemetery, you said that was a couple different cemeteries?
Yes. So the majority of the cemetery we filmed at one location, but there's a lot of tombstone shots in the opening footage, the driving footage and everything. A few of those shots, the cutover shots, are different cemeteries. We originally had 3 cemeteries we shot in, but some of the footage we lost was actually this amazing footage of this one cemetery out by a city called Akron out here in Ohio. I'm so mad we lost, because it was just a lot of like mausoleums, really like beautiful, like old architecture. There's a shot of me running up to one of the mausoleums and like trying to get the metal gate open, and you could hear like the hands inside of the mausoleum of the zombies trying, because they're the dead bodies inside of it. And I was like, why? But you know, it is what it is. But and one thing I will say is, like Adam's flight from the cemetery, that is one of the scenes that had the most damage. The audio was really damaged. My brother is completely ADR'd by a different person, Johnny. It's the voice. The voice is someone else. Every line, which I feel so bad, but it is what it is. The actor is from Pittsburgh, and we couldn't get schedules to match up. So a lot of that audio had to really be finessed. I feel that if any scene really is affected by the damage that we had, it was unfortunately the opening scene in the cemetery, because we had a lot more footage that you saw in the final cut. But I'm still proud of it. I'm still proud. And I think the movie only gets better as it goes on, but that's the one scene that I really feel took a hit from the damage.
Yeah, that's really disappointing. I mean, what's on the screen follows more of the original movie, so there's that. But yeah, I mean, that mausoleum stuff would have been great to see. I mean, it's such a disappointment.
Yeah.
And what was your crew like? I mean, how many people did you have working on this?
Man, one thing I gotta be so thankful for is, this was, a lot of people came out solely just trusting me that we're going to make something happen. And that's all it was just the fact that I said, I've worked with a lot of you, you've directed me, or you've worked with me on a crew, and I've been acting, but now I want to make my own thing. And I would really love it if you'd be involved. And everybody I asked participated. And I felt very flattered in the sense that I had a good, I guess I had people who respected me, people who I respected me. That felt good. But my big thing, and even with everything that happened with the movie, and I think they knew this going into it, is I want, if I was going to start something, I was going to see it through to completion, and I was going to finish it. And this movie took me a very long time, but I haven't directed anything else since I started this. This is my first project, and I have no business stepping onto something else until I see this through to completion. Or if it really can't be finished, then shame on me. But but I saw it through to completion, and I think my big driving force was the fact that I had such a crew that supported me and raised me up and really helped me elevate the product. I was very blessed. Like I said, Noelle, who shot the film, she and I had worked before. She's just, she's a friend. She's a great talent. And I loved having a female eye behind the camera. You don't get a lot of that. And I think she brought an elegance to some of the cinematography that you don't always see on this indie level. She had a very beautiful, fluid way that she filmed it, and I was very happy with it. And just a lot of support. It was a positive set. There was no egos. There was none of this. There was just people wanting to see it done right. And so I think that was a huge motivator to ensuring, like, I'm getting this done. These people deserve to see a final product,
So with your cast, what were you looking for in them? Because they're pretty, except for Adam, they're pretty much the same type of characters from the first film. The Reverend is obviously much more out there, but what were you trying to do that was a little bit different from the Romero one?
I knew a good amount of the cast. When I started doing this, I knew that I wanted Rachel Anderson to play Helen, but I knew I wanted Helen to be, I don't think the original Helen is necessarily weak. She stands up to her husband, but I knew I really wanted to push. If I was going to replace the female lead with a male, then the other focal female really needed to have some meat to her. And Rachel Anderson is someone who's a friend of mine, who I had worked with on Mother Krampus 2 and several other projects. And she's just an amazing dramatic actress. And I knew that she would bring the level of intensity for this character. And I knew that she's someone who puts her all into a performance. I think you really see that with her performance in this. And I knew that I wanted there to be an age difference between Helen and her husband, because when I would think of the Cooper structure, the whole Cooper family was really inspired by the Westboro Baptist Church. When I started writing the
Oh.
script, it was when they were like picketing a lot of those, yeah. And even down to like the dialogue of him, he has a piece of dialogue where he's like, my bus got flipped over, my people, those are good people. Like the idea of them transporting in one of those big shuttle buses and everything. Like I had that all in mind of who these people were and how they operated. And so I wanted that for Cooper. I wanted somebody who abused the purpose of religion and what it stands for. I mean, I'm not someone who's a religious person, but I think when religion is used in the right ways, it's a beautiful thing. When you have religion and you use it to inspire kindness to people, regardless of who they are, or charity. I mean, that's what I think religion stands for. But there are obviously people who use it, who manipulate religion for their own devices, and I knew that's what I wanted to put into that reverend character, and I felt that the story, while they didn't do in the original Night of the Living Dead, and you're right, because you had said earlier about the dialogue, they never address Ben's skin color or anything, because the character was originally written to be white. Ben was originally written to be white. They just cast him because they cast Dwayne Jones because he was the best talent. Now, did they know that this was going to be groundbreaking? I'm sure when they were doing it, they're like, this is a big deal in 1968 when they're filming, 1969 when it's being released. But now in 2020, I think, to have an older white man with that kind of authority going up against a young man of color, it's hard to do something like that and not call it out. And I really, that not only the skin color difference, but the age difference and the entitlement, but of the older white man, older white Christian, I really wanted to call that out, because I wanted Ben to be the heart of the movie. That's why I wrote his dialogue to Adam. How can I say this? People have called out Adam being so flamboyantly gay as a bad thing. And that was very intentional. Like, I'm gay, but I don't necessarily consider myself to be feminine, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I just, everyone is their own personality, and there are feminine gay men, and they exist, and that's not a bad thing. And for some reason, I think there's something even within the gay scene that's pointed out as a thing. Why are they so feminine? Well, some people, that's just who they are. And I really think that for Cooper's angle to really make sense in this movie, with the whole kind of hateful mentality of who he is, it had to be pretty clear to him who Adam was. And so I decided to kind of push it a little more with Adam's flamboyance and his overall femininity. But it also lent to a very, I think, beautiful dynamic between Adam and Ben. Ben being a lower class man of color who, regardless of who Adam is, feminine, white, gay boy, and obviously with some money based off his wardrobe, regardless of who he is, Ben is the one to basically take care of him, to check on him, to make sure he's always asking, are you okay? Like, I wanted Ben's heart to kind of be what carried certain aspects of the story.
Yeah, and it shows that because he's wearing the garage, kind of those overall type things that they wear, that jumpsuit.
Yep.
And so he's a grease monkey, and he's working on cars for a living. So the thing that I've noticed with like your version of Harry Cooper is it's all projection, and so everything that he's saying to Adam and to Ben is really a reflection of him. So when he's using these words and when he's getting angry and deep down, Reverend Cooper there might be gay. He could have that little altar boy off to the side, and that's making him mad. So he's got to take it out on somebody. And
there's a huge masculinity issue with him. There's a need to be the masculine force. That's why it's always the big loud vocals, the puffed chest out. Alvin Hudson does a great job with that character. I think Alvin knew what we needed with that character, and kicked it out of the park. I mean, I was very lucky to have such a skilled actor with such a dominant voice in that role, because that was really just the need to be dominant. I think was a huge thing with Cooper, but I feel that Ben challenges his masculinity, and and Harry's a dick from right off the bat, but as soon as his wife decides that she's going to challenge him is when
Right.
you really see the cracks start to form. And that's when he gets physical, because he realizes he has nobody else to have power over. It's all about asserting power over people. And that's what people who abuse religion choose to do. They assert their opinions, they assert their power, the power that they think they have, which they really have none. We're all the same. But that's what I wanted to point out is the issue within people who use religion as a weapon.
Yeah, and I like how Ben speaks with some slang that it's not, that he is modern day, like he'll say, yo man, let me in, as he's trying to get back into the house again. And it is an interesting dynamic with them. Oh, but the one guy who I did want to definitely bring up is, so you have the Christian, God-loving Reverend who's this horrible racist. Well, you have the guy from Duck Dynasty who's like the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah. I wanted to have characters who kind of challenge our viewpoints on certain things. And so I had the older white man who is rooted in his religious bigotry, but I also wanted to have the man who looks like you look at that character and you think that he is going to be just, Duck Dynasty, a complete that stereotype that fits the image. And I didn't want that to be the person. I wanted him to also be some of the heart of the movie. And Jim Strang, who plays that character, that's who he is. He is just a loving, kind man. And I thought he was perfect for that role. And there's even that moment where you see a moment of tension between him and Harry, when Harry's having that really heated moment with me at the TV, and he kind of calls him out. And I love that you have these kind of two extremes of that older generation having this kind of moment between each other. But that character, because there's not a lot, I mean, a lot of these characters are based off a character within the film, the original Night of the Living Dead. If they aren't that character by name, they're inspired. That character is actually inspired by the original script for Night of the Living Dead, in which Tom was the caretaker at the cemetery that Barbara and Johnny arrive at. Judy, the girlfriend, did not exist, and Tom was an older character. We wrote it and they changed it when they brought Judith Ripley in to play Judy, because she was, I think, a secretary for their company at the time, and they realized she was just very catching on camera. But so I wanted to kind of sprinkle some of my knowledge of Night of the Living Dead, that I'm not just someone who's just tapping into the material. Like, I have a very deep, vast knowledge of the movie, and I love it, and it's very close to my heart. So I wanted to tap into that a little bit and just take some of that influence. And that's why it's Tom and George at the truck together during that sequence, because it's both elements of that character.
Okay, that's interesting, because I was trying to figure out. I'm like, I know that guy wasn't in the original one, so he must be a brand new character. But then that makes total sense then. So and it was nice to see him, because I'm like, we got the Duck Dynasty guy in here, and he's got the American flag on his hat, and is he going to turn around and there's going to be a Confederate flag tattooed on his arm, and it's not. It's the exact opposite of what you would think. So that was really kind of nice and refreshing, because not everybody is that way. It's just you can think immediately, like, that that guy's a white supremacist. This guy's racist, and he's not. You're doing what you shouldn't be doing. You're profiling somebody because they could be totally cool.
Exactly. And that's why, like you mentioned with Ben too, like the slang aspect, like I wanted Ben to read as rough as possible in his initial appearance, even how he initially comes into the film, because he kind of gets physical with Adam before he realizes that Adam poses no threat. But when Aswan Harris, who plays Ben, who really was phenomenal to work with and brought a lot to the character. I mean, I said to him early in, I was like, listen, I am a white male writing this dialogue, and I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't want to think I know how you're going to say something. So I gave him like the basic structure of what needed to come across. And I was like, I really need you to kind of take this character and interpret it in a way that's authentic. Because if I sit here and say this way, this is how I want it, like it's probably going to sound like a white guy wrote it. So I mean, I understand the situation. Just like if someone a straight guy who'd never met a gay person wrote a gay character, chances are it would feel like a stereotype, you know? So
Right.
I just, I gave him that kind of control over the dialogue. And even with like, there's usages of a few words in the film. There's the N word gets thrown out once, and I was really on the fence because it's very taboo. And the F word for gays gets used too, but for
Right.
me, I'm like, well, that's coming from experience. For me as a gay man, I feel it makes sense for me to use that. But and that's also something that I had to talk to Aswan about and be like, listen, this character needs to be vile, and I want that to be felt on camera because he represents everything wrong with this viewpoint. And I need to know, for you being on the set and as you're viewing this, how does this resonate with you? And does it seem authentic? Does it feel wrong? Should I avoid it? And we decided to move forward with it because I don't feel it would have made sense for a character that hateful to not speak, coming from that kind of a dark place, to not speak with that kind of vitriol and that kind of language. Because even on Twitter and on all these platforms where you see a lot of these really far right-wing conservatives filtering the language and now watching what they say out of fear of being removed, that behind closed doors, how they talk, you know the words that
Oh
are
yeah.
being used by these people.
Oh yeah. That's why Parler was created.
Exactly.
So
And so between him and his wife to be having a conversation like this, and for him to be speaking with such disdain, I mean, unfortunately, those kinds of people exist. And if it's going to be authentic, I think it needed to go there to show that.
well, and that's and me being a straight white male, that would be, I don't even touch that stuff. I mean, it's
Yeah.
and it's but I appreciate it when people do, because that the Cooper character looks straight at Adam and Ben and goes, "This is your fault. This is caused because of you." And it's not because they're people, it's because one is black and one is gay. You're the cause of this. You've put me into this situation. I love God. Look what you have done, because you're evil. You're, everything you do is a sin. And it's like, no, in fact, actually, I would, in that situation, I would flip it and say, no, Harry, it's because of you. You're evil. You're the one who brings all this into the world. It's the God-fearing, Christian guy, in my opinion, who would start all this type of stuff, with just pure hate. So it's, I like that you did that. I like that you brought that into it.
Thank you. And, I do have to say, like, being an indie film, I know that we're going to get some slack and some hate, and even like the fans of the original, the purists, I get it and I respect that. But I also know that there's going to be people who are going to target this movie simply for representing what it does and standing for what it stands for and voicing certain things it voices. And I recently read a review that said, it was like, God damn left-wing extreme Hollywood having putting their political bullshit in another classic film. And I was like, okay, first of all, thank you for saying Hollywood, because $8,000, it was made for $8,000. Second of all, if you don't know that the original movie is a time capsule of social commentary, then you don't know this movie at all, and you have no business talking about it, because this movie talked about a lot of things. Those zombies represented a lot of things, and what was going on inside that house between those characters represented a lot of things. And just because they don't say it as blunt as my characters maybe do, doesn't mean that wasn't an undercurrent of the message coming through from the original film. That movie had plenty going on in it.
Oh yeah, and especially from where Romero got his idea from, which would be, Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, and the kind of vampire ghouls that are in I Am Legend were actually Russians. It was, it was all about communism and him being the last one that, that wouldn't conform to what was going on. And it's my favorite novel that I've ever read, and I think Matheson is a brilliant writer. And
Mhm.
for Romero to kind of take that and then cast a black actor, and we've heard 1,000 interviews where he said, like you had mentioned, it's not because he's black, it's because he was the
Mhm.
best actor, which I 100% agree,
Right.
or
Yep.
believe that he did. And
Yep.
then having Martin Luther King shot and killed like right when the film came out, and it's
Yeah.
like a black lead actor, Martin Luther King being killed. I mean, it's the timing of this was amazing of what was going on with this film. And then you could make up all your own allegories for the
Yeah.
zombies and the hunters and the Venus probe and all that stuff. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's not just a zombie film. I don't think
Yeah.
people get that. There's a lot more going on there.
No. Yeah. I mean, and Romero in general, I mean, he had a way of tackling just social commentary with everything he touched, but doing it in a way that wasn't forcing it down your throat. Dawn of the Dead, consumerism,
Yeah.
and we and so he was great at that. And I think that there's probably plenty of viewers who don't understand the many layers to Night of the
No.
Living Dead, and why it works on so many levels. And pardon me, and just exactly how deep the film really is. And there's a reason that it stood up against the testament of time, and is still considered one of the greatest horror films ever. And there's a reason that the zombie phenomenon is what it is, and things like Walking Dead and everything have maintained, just because the whole idea of the zombie and what it is, it's a very complex monster, it's a creature, and it's very moldable, and it's probably the most recent incarnation of an iconic monster, because the flesh-eating zombies only really existed since Night of the Living Dead, really,
Yeah.
and I think that how we as a society were interpreting that monster is still evolving, and then we've seen running zombies, we've seen sentient zombies, we've seen a whole lot of things. Even Romero played with his own lure, but it's still very fresh, and I think because of that, it lends itself to being interpreted in ways that have more meaning, more depth, more nuance, and it's very timely.
Yeah. And because before Romero, it was all voodoo. I mean, everything
Mhm.
was just on an island and it was voodoo. And
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, I don't even think the people are dead. They're just like hypnotized, and they're
yeah.
uh but they're, I don't know, when did zombie even come up? I'm not even sure when the word zombie rolled around.
They never say zombie in the film.
No, not Night of the Living
In
Dead.
Night, they
No.
call them ghouls.
Yeah. So it's, and then of
But
course,
I mean, it kind of just adopted that.
yeah, and then of course, Fulci's zombie or zombie,
Yeah,
did use, that was all voodoo. So that was, which then in the
yeah,
later sequels to that became science, with like a chemical coming out
yeah,
or whatever. But that was even voodoo. I mean, they didn't even
yeah.
stick with what Romero did. But
Right,
I
right,
think
right.
that
Yeah.
is like with zombie is, I think that goes off of Dawn of the Dead, of the whole thing of, when there's no more
Mhm.
room in hell, and Ken Foree says, voodoo, my grandfather tells me it's voodoo.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say, like, we've seen the concept of the zombie so heavily explored, especially in like the last 10 years. There's been this resurgence, which I love, but also, like, I think there's something about the simplicity of not knowing what causes it. And like, I always find my favorite moments within zombie films is the time period of distress and lack of understanding. It's the whole trying to get a grasp of what's going on. I tend to, like, sometimes lose interest as you go further into these complex situations, and like people are living in alternate societies. I like to see the downfall of structure. I like to
Oh
see the
yeah.
downfall of society. And so I think when these things are presented with the least explanation and the least backstory possible is when they really are their most terrifying, because you don't know. You don't know what causes it. You don't know why, but suddenly your neighbor's turning against you, your relatives turning against you, and you have to defend yourself. And that's, I think, when these movies really shine.
Yeah, and that's where The Walking Dead lost to me, is all of a sudden where we have these
Mhm.
kind of fortresses, and they have gardens, and everybody's living peacefully. And it's like, no, I'm not interested in that. I want to see them crumbling buildings, and I want to see wastelands, and I don't want to see, that now that we're in season 5, that everything is working out. I don't want that. I mean, that's
no, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it just does. Like, I watched, have you seen Black Summer?
Yeah, I loved season 1 of Black Summer. Loved it.
Loved it too. I even put out
Mhm.
on Facebook, this is the type of zombie series I would make. There's no
Right.
explanation. It's all one shot.
Mhm.
It's just insane. So
Mhm.
disappointed with season 2. But
Yeah,
it's one of those shows that's mixed. Some people love season
yeah,
1, some people hate it, some people love season 2, and some people hate it. But it's one of those things where
yeah,
that show starts off with them running. They're jetting out of
yeah,
that house in that very first episode, and we have no idea why. And that's kind of how it needs
yeah,
to be.
yeah. So regarding season 2, I didn't hate it. I liked it, but I see why people didn't love it. I'm curious to see where they're going to be able to take it. I'll say this: if by season 3, if I don't start getting hordes of zombies, I'm going to be mad. But one thing I did like about season 2 is I think they're still very much in survival mode. I think they're only a few months into all of this. We didn't see a lot of zombies, but like the whole idea of them moving up a mountain, that's what I would do, because I don't think zombies could get to me. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, they're kind of doing what I would do. But overall, like, did I want to see like a more diversity in the overall locations and the volume of zombies? Yes, it was far more of a drama than I anticipated, and I enjoyed it for what it was. But if by season 3, if I'm not getting some hardcore zombie horde action, they might start losing me.
There were only a couple times in season 1 where I went, why are you doing this?
Oh,
In season
oh,
2, I thought, if I could talk to the writers, I would love to know why they did all these things. And I would have a list of about
yeah,
50 things. And I love the
yeah,
snow. I love movies that take
yeah.
place in the snow, especially if you're going to drop
Mhm.
zombies in the snow, or Jason Voorhees, or put Freddy in the snow.
Yeah.
I would be so happy with that. Blood looks great on snow, and visually
Yes.
all that stuff looks gorgeous. So when they go to the lodge, and they're in there, and I'm like, oh, this lodge is great. But there's
Yeah.
that whole episode where one of our characters meets up with that guy who knows
Yeah.
him from so, and I'm like, it's got to be his imagination. It has to be. This is so awful. This is so
Yeah.
boring that it has to be his imagination. And
Yeah.
people are saying it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah. I think beyond that, well, I mean, like, I think that whole arc with that character could be really explored. I feel like that character kind of got done dirty. I wanted a lot more for that. That was one of the things that left me kind of like, hmm. But I do like how willing they are to dispatch certain major characters. But yeah, that episode, I hear you, and I feel like there are just some things that kind of just left me hanging. That left me hanging. I mean, I enjoyed it, but certainly not as much as I enjoyed the first season. And yeah, I need to see more of that. I want to see the first 10 minutes of Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead extended into 3 seasons of a TV series. Like, I
That would
want
be good.
that insane bat shit. Just how do you survive? Your neighbors on fire running across the street. Like, that's what I want.
Unlike the dumpster fire that Army of the Dead was. So
Yeah. I had fun with Army of the Dead, but it's not because it was a zombie movie. I was just like, okay, this is a lot of bullshit. Like, okay. But I was the whole like hierarchy of zombies, I was like, that's not my thing. It was like fun to watch because it was colorful. I wouldn't be revisiting it.
yeah, I like Zack Snyder. I'm a big fan of his. I've, for the most part, have enjoyed everything that he's made. Watchmen is my favorite comic book movie, especially that ultimate cut. To me, Army of the Dead was pure lazy. It was like a 12-year-old wrote it, and it so didn't make sense. You can't fly in, but you can fly out. If the whole thing was to get the Queen's head, they were only literally 20 feet away from the door that they could have left. Why isn't the Asian guy giving them the combination to the safe? Like it's a safe. He
Yeah.
doesn't have a combination.
Yeah.
So it's so
And that was his casino, was it not?
Yeah.
Was that his casino?
And this is
Yeah,
not Vegas. I'm sorry, it's not Vegas. They're I mean, I know that they couldn't use Caesars, so they had to use, something else. But I mean, Resident Evil did it better with showing Vegas.
Yeah.
And it was so disappointed. I was so lazy. I think I put up like 5 videos about how bad it is. And people are like, why do you keep trashing on it? Because it's a bad movie. It's bad writing, and him doing the whole
I'll say that,
thing.
like, yeah. And like, there's the one sequence of like traditional zombies, and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then I never saw them again. I was like that's what I was coming. It's called Army of the Dead. It's a zombie movie. This is why I'm anticipating. Like, again, that whole like hierarchy of zombies. Like, you know what? At least he was trying to evolve the concept. It's just not where I would want to see it go. I don't need my zombies to have reasoning. Right. I like them to just be hungry for flesh and leave it at that. But that's me. That's me. So
yeah. I felt that maybe he was trying to make like an Italian, apocalypse film and have crazy zombies in them like the Italians do. So it's but whatever. So well, let me get back to Rebirth, because that's why you're here. So I have a couple smaller questions in here.
Okay. Yeah.
So I did like how you actually got Barbara into the dialogue. So at the cemetery, it's they're coming to get you. Oh, Barbara, she wants a photo. So I like that. I thought that was fun.
Thank you. I knew I was like, I've got to honor the line. I have to. That's one thing I was like, I got to. But how do you do it? And I was like, okay, I think I have an idea, and I think it worked. So
have people pick that up?
I've not seen anyone make a comment about it yet, to be honest. I did have one guy who reviewed the movie and he really trashed me. He like just destroyed me. But he was like, it's clear that Roger Connors' one goal in life is to play Barbara. I was like, okay. But he mentioned it. But then that comment got removed, not by me, for homophobic slander. So
okay.
But yeah, no, he did mention that. Yeah. I was like, one day I came back and I was like, this has been removed. I was like, oh, awesome.
And the zombie eyes. So let's go back to that for a second. I noticed sometimes they're not glowing and sometimes they are glowing. What's the difference between the two?
Yes. So we decided at one point we were just glowing the whole time. And first of all, my reasoning for the glowing is I said earlier, I really wanted to make it feel like it was not a Romero zombie. So I was kind of playing with ideas of like, how can we take inspiration from other things, and even like I was kind of tapping into video games, and you said Resident Evil, and I thought of like the classic, like when you think of like BioShock, when you see from a distance, you'll see like the outline, but you'll see like the white eyes glowing. That's another thing that kind of played factor into it, where it looks like, the eyes kind of just come into focus. And so we decided that when the zombies detect warm flesh, they go into a feed mode.
Oh.
And when that kind of gets initiated, you see the eyes go on when they actually detect that there's something to eat. You literally see the moment where they realize that is in their presence, and you see the eyes go, and you actually kind of hear it. There's like almost a sound with it as well. Yeah,
it's kind of like a electricity, almost like they're turning on.
Yeah, we wanted to kind of keep almost a sci-fi edge a little bit, because that era, the 60s, the 70s, if you think of a lot of the iconic films, even like, The Blob, and like when sci-fi was kind of evolving to more like The Thing and things like that transitional phase in the 70s, and where you had like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you're kind of starting to see sci-fi also take a more human approach. It wasn't so much about the shtick of it. And so I wanted to kind of give the movie almost a sci-fi vibe, because I think they kind of blend hand in hand,
Yeah, and that's interesting, because they have. I just watched The Invasion with Nicole Kidman last night.
Yeah,
I was into it until that ending, that happy ending. You killed me.
Yeah.
Nope, you killed me.
Yeah.
And I like the whole human thing of it, that they're still pretty normal, but they're not normal, and
Yeah.
they kind of give you the
Yeah.
explanation for it on like a computer, which is kind of cool. They show all the cells and stuff. I was into the ending, so that's. I don't think people should make happy endings to these types of movies.
I agree. I will say that movie got a lot of slack when it came out, but I think I mean, I love The Invasion. I think it's better than the reputation it developed, and I think a lot of it was ahead of its time. Like the time jumping, you know how it goes across different like it'll go from like current time to like flashback for a long period, and they'll jump to the future. That's something that's like a big film technique now in 2020 2021, and that was back in like 2006. I think it was kind of ahead of its time, but I do know that movie had a lot of reshoots, and that ending I think probably was a result of that.
That it made, because I was watching it going, oh wow, this is a lot like the coronavirus. I'm sorry, the virus of unknown specification. I don't want YouTube getting rid of me. And because they're talking about like giving people shots, and that the virus is in the shots. And of course, with everybody these days paranoid about the shots with, I'm going to turn into a magnet. But then just that ending, she hops onto the helicopter, and then everything's okay. They got the cure. It's like, no, we needed part 2. That's part 2. You know, I would have lived with them hopping in to the helicopter.
Yeah. The buildup of even them getting to like that finale is even really intense. It is weird that and then it ends, you know, but yeah, I that's a movie that I think needs to be analyzed again now, having been through what we've been through. I think some movies age better with time, and I think that movie is one that if we revisited that today, it would be way looked at way more fondly, you know.
Well, and I remember when it came out, I read one critic who said the movie has nothing to say, because at the time that it came out, nothing was going on. I mean, the original, of course, was, once again, it was about communism and the Cold War and all that type of stuff. And then this, you know, you have the one in the 70s, which was, you know, of course, we didn't get along with Russia also. And then the military, you know, about how people are brainwashed into the military for the third one. What did this one have to say? Now it has something to say when you go back to 2020. Now it definitely does, so
plenty. Plenty.
Yeah. One thing I definitely want to bring up, and I do have a note on it right here: full frontal nudity.
And do we have full frontal nudity? I feel it was like the next frontier with film. I feel that it's something that I'm not looking to get people naked on every movie I make, but when you're dealing with things like corpses, it's just like what scares me, if you do nudity right in a movie, it's removing the sexy factor from nudity. Like a perfect example, It Follows. There's this scene where she's on the chair and she sees the woman coming up, and she's up in I think she's in like a factory or something, and she sees the nude woman just randomly naked approaching the building. She knows that this woman is this demon, and she's nude for no reason. And it's so unsettling. There's something very uncomfortable about nudity when it's done right. There is I've been said that we've gone full butthole with this movie.
Yes, there is. It is like, a straightforward odd shot. But once again, I say what? Congratulations to that. You know, why not?
Thank you. You know, it was the shock factor. Like, and people have commented on that. Thank you. And there is the female zombie is also nude. I will say this, because there's actually 3 nude zombies in that whole sequence. Because my idea is, and I have the whole thing in my head, but I know the viewer's not going to know this. The cemetery is the next plot over. If you think of my journey, of Adam's journey, running from the cemetery to the farmhouse to the gas station, it's all within a certain radius. So if you look at the zombies in that sequence within the auto repair shop, all of the nude zombies have the incision marks, morgue incision marks. And if you see in the cemetery, there's an abandoned hearse. So the
Right.
idea in my mind is that these are all bodies that have made their way over this direction. So to me, it just makes sense you're going to have some nudity. We originally were not going to have the full butthole shot, but my heterosexual editor said, you know what, Roger? He's like, if you're gonna be remembered for one thing, I think it should be this. And he's like, I would do it. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. So we did it. So yeah, got for you who have not seen the movie, be prepared.
Yeah, at first I was kind of like, whoa, it's there it is,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Hello.
Winks at you.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it's
Yeah.
we've seen enough. Like, okay, I'm gonna give the first Axis movie an example out of there.
Mhm.
In the script, there are two characters, and I wanted the female to get topless. And the actress who I got, Lindsay Cruz, said, "Look, I'm trying to be a real actress. I don't want to do nudity. Can I just do something sexy? Can I wear like a sexy top or show cleavage or something?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And then Nathan, who played her boyfriend, I said, "Do you mind taking your shirt off? This guy he's built like a linebacker." And I'm like, "Do you mind taking your shirt off?" And so he did. So when they kind of go down to make out on the floor in a storage unit, she takes his shirt off. And I call that one for the ladies, because it's so many horror films, it's all about the boobs. And rarely do you ever see a guy get naked. And it doesn't matter if it's a straight director, a gay director, a woman director, man director, whatever. It gets boring after a while. And, I like boobs just as much as the next straight guy does. But it was kind of nice, actually, to kind of change it up a little bit there. So I think anybody that has a problem with that scene in your film, I think maybe maybe they want to look a little bit closer in the mirror at who they are.
Well, and like, I guess if someone has an issue with it because of the shock factor, like, well, then that means I achieved what I was going for. Like, I want people to be and made uncomfortable. Like, it's meant to make you uncomfortable. And it's supposed to be just to make that moment feel as raw and out of control, and just there's this completely when that character Tom is going through that situation, he's hiding behind that metal. There's like only a metal table between him and all these zombies that are feeding, and like there's not to be any filter. These zombies aren't to be like demure and cover themselves. They're corpses eating flesh, and they it's so it just, to me, as uncomfortable it is like it should be uncomfortable, and it makes sense why it would be. It makes sense why they'd be naked. It makes sense why they're not covering up their bodies. It just lends itself.
Yeah, and it's definitely an interesting scene. So it's so thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for asking the question.
So with the so what do you think about overall, to kind of go back to movie zombies for a second? What do you think about slow to fast zombies, or zombies using weapons? At one point, Romero in Night of the Living Dead, the cemetery zombie does use a rock. So it's
I mean, there's a few occasions within the original. Yeah, I mean, even like there's a zombie that throws a rock through the window when they're coming through the farmhouse. There's Karen uses the trowel. I mean, he's had infused within his his idea of what a zombie is. That from day one, that was infused within it. And I think there's something interesting within the idea of zombies still possessing a certain element of what they were, because the brain, I like to really get into it and be like, okay, it makes sense if these zombies still are able to tap into some basic aspects of what they were before they became these flesh hungry monsters. That makes sense to me, because the brain is, however, now it's activated in a certain way, but there's still it's the same organ, it's the same thing, and it's operating the limbs, it's operating everything else. So who's to say there wouldn't still be certain elements that they would tap into of who they were prior, or the basic knowledge of how to use tools. I love, like I said, Night of the Living Dead 68, my favorite horror film of all time, defined my love of cinema. Dawn of the Dead, one of my favorite movies. I love the Zack Snyder remake of Dawn of the Dead. I think the running zombies only add to the fear element. And I love Day of the Dead. Land of the Dead I like, but once it starts to kind of get with that, where the zombies are becoming sentient, it kind of starts to lose me a little bit. I like my zombies to be shells of what they were. I don't need to really see a ton of progression. I would say Bub in Day of the Dead is like the most I really want to see from that. But like I get where he was going because each movie kind of naturally led to the progression of it. But like the original trilogy, you know, they are very close to my heart.
Oh yeah, the holy
yeah,
trilogy. Yeah, because I have to
yeah,
agree with you. Night of Living Dead, the original, is my favorite zombie film and my favorite horror movie.
yeah,
The Graduate is actually my favorite film of all time, but
yeah.
it is by far my favorite horror and zombie film. The one thing that gets me in Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and I kind of think maybe he broke his rule possibly, is the
Yeah.
zombie that's waiting for Roger that jumps at him. He's pretending to be a mannequin and jumps at him, and he puts the screwdriver in his head.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, can zombies be sneaky? Like, did he
Yeah.
know like they're gonna run past there? So I'm just gonna stand perfectly still until he does.
Yeah, I wonder if part of that, like Roger's character, though, is also the most like he's the least well, I don't want to say the least thoughtful in the sense of like planning. I think Roger is the one who's the kind of sporadic. He acts on instinct and not planning ahead per se. So I think maybe that was partially just showing how he's kind of aloof to what's going on around him, which is, I mean, eventually also kind of comes into play with the whole sequence of the trucks too. That's why he's the one that has the fate he experiences. I think it's because he's kind of, he's driving around. He's like, yeah, woo, like, remember that whole thing. He's kind of his own downfall, and I wonder if that's more to show because he's not paying attention, because zombies are naturally just kind of like, so I wonder if that's just him not seeing what's going on. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it just seems a little off for the Romero zombies to do that. So it's and I love the original trilogy. I think it's brilliant. And then Land of the Dead, I really wish Romero would have stopped. It's not the film that we wanted. It was obviously the original script for Day of the Dead. He just shrunk it down. And I think and even like Diary, I could, if he wanted to experiment, I could get behind that a little bit. Not fully, we added music to it to make it sound, more mysterious. No, I'm not buying any of that stuff. Survival is where I got my problem. Survival to me is just a bad zombie film. It seems like a Romero ripoff.
Yeah.
And I cannot get
behind it. It's a bummer. Yeah, it's a bummer that the series kind of like sputtered out towards the end there. But I mean, he has such an like outstanding collection of movies, even outside of his Living Dead films. The Crazies.
Oh yeah,
phenomenal film. So I think towards the end there, I think it was just I guess kind of beating a dead horse. I stand by the original three, that those are the ones that I swear by, and it sounds like you too. Just because I don't need there to be any further evolution of that concept,
Right, and I could get behind the remakes and the sequels and the spin-offs, and because it's all fun, Return to Living Dead and all that stuff, and I could get behind that. But when the master does it, I'm not a fan. It's like you should know better, dude. That kind of out.
Yeah, one thing I feel with him is like, I'm sure he had a lot of people towards the end pushing him to Hollywoodify, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that he had to do when it comes to big money or funding for films, appease certain people and so forth. And I wonder how much of those projects were really him, and how much was what they wanted, what the funders wanted it to be. When you look at like Survival, because they had that whole like, after Blair Witch and everything, that whole camera perspective that they did was really big then, remember? And I wonder how much of that was truly Romero, but we'll never know. I mean, at this point,
right.
But he was the master. He was the original. And when it comes to like the remakes and everything, you know what? I don't have an issue with a remake. I may not like a remake, but just because a remake exists doesn't mean the original is no longer what it was. If anything, if a remake's bad, it just makes the original look that much better. And if a remake's good, it draws attention to the original material that inspired it.
Well, and going off that is the remake. The original always gets a great release. So you hear about the remake of John Carpenter's The Thing, the remake prequel. Yeah. Well, that only means that Scream Factory is going to release like the ultimate DVD of of John Carpenter's version of it. So I'm like, bring remakes forward. I'm good with that because we're only going to get a great version of the original movie from there.
It generates a fresh interest.
Yeah. I mean, there are some of these movies that I just don't, and people, I don't know why I want to buy them or do own them, but like Day of the Dead 2 or Creepshow 3, some of these ones just like, why do these things even exist except that you own the title?
Yeah. There's a few of them. I think, like, I mean, and there was like, I'm not going to talk poorly about another Night of the Living Dead because here I am making my own version. But I know that fans, once you start getting you start getting the 3Ds and everything, and it does start to feel like a cash grab, And one thing, like with mine, like we made it for very little money, and we never expected to make money. You know how the indie thing works. Like, we're not going to get, I'm not going to see tons of money from this release. It's more about just making something I love. But when you see some of these movies, I think it's very clear that they're cashing in on it. I think that's where people start to get frustrated. But if you make a remake that's a respectful homage to the original film, no matter what, I mean, bring it on. I'm fine with it. There are some remakes I love.
Yeah, and it's like the two Day of the Dead remakes, the first one by Steve Miner. I mean, I think all of us said, well, do we need this? Why do we need it? But then we were also kind of looking forward to it at the same time. And then you have Bub as a vegetarian. What?
Yeah.
And then you got Ving Rhames thinking like, oh, this is a direct sequel, to Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead.
Right.
Nope. He's in it for 5 minutes. And then they released Bloodline, which weird. Is better, but not really. But all that's it's like we got Ving Rhames for one day. They'll just throw him in.
Yeah, that was so weird that they chose to involve him with that, because like with Dawn of the Dead, like the characters, I thought the focal characters in the Dawn of the Dead remake were pretty great, and I was kind of like, ooh, okay, like we're going to continue that story, but no, it was its own universe. It was a completely different thing.
Yeah, and I was very surprised with it. I had no idea who Zack Snyder was, and for Dawn of the Dead, and it was a complete surprise to me. I had no idea what we were going to get. So when we started getting these remakes afterwards, it was just like, well, maybe. I mean, it is Steve Miner. He just came off of Halloween H2O, and it's like, all right, well, whatever. We'll go in my collection anyways. I got all of them, just sitting on one shelf. So
right. They may be gathering dust, but
yeah. So it's just one of those things that just, I don't know why. So a couple other things with Rebirth. So now I don't want to give away the ending, but love the ending. And it follows my, not all things need to be peachy keen. Now there are some, kind of like the original, there are like these rednecks that are out there, and what they could have been military. They're rednecks. They could have been anybody. Why rednecks?
I feel like with that whole ending sequence, I wanted it to really capture the tone of the original movie, but show how it applies today still. The ending of the original Night of the Living Dead is iconic, and for good reason. And people have analyzed it and picked it apart and dissected it. And I think that I wanted to recapture that energy, but still have a surprise factor. And so, one of the things we're tackling with Rebirth is the idea of uh, minorities in general, and there are plenty of minorities within the film that are treated poorly by certain characters for an array of reasons. But you have the woman, you have the man of color, you have the gay man. And, I wanted to show that there are a lot of things that still operate very much the same as they did in 1968. So I wanted those characters to kind of mirror that kind of good old boy posse mentality with the ending of my film. I wanted to still have that kind of feeling of certain people are just disposable to them,
So there's so would they kind of just be like the shoot first, don't ask questions later type of guys? Like they had no idea that you're just a human. You're not a zombie. You're just walking down the street, or Adam's walking down the street, and they just decide to kill him for no reason. It's just
yeah. Well, I mean, I think part of it in my mind with the way I picture it is because Adam is in shock. If we're really going to dissect that moment, he's in shock, and so his overall demeanor is questionable. When from a distance, did they know? It's more of the did they know? It's more of what the viewer takes away from it. Maybe they did because he's dressed a certain way and looks a certain way. That we chose to make that wardrobe very prissy and fancy, or was it because they thought he was a zombie? I mean, I know in my mind what I think, but I really like to think that different people viewing the movie will have a different feeling, different opinion on it.
Yeah, I definitely feel that you can, with the type of film that it is, apply a lot of what's going on today, to those actions. So that it could be rednecks, it could be militia, it could be cops, it could be whatever it is, that if it's, pretty much anybody walking down that street, that type of thing would have happened.
Yeah.
So it's just the nature of, of who they are.
Yeah. It really is that like I said, that good old boy shoot first mentality. I wanted that. It's more about the whole lack of care of the humanity of how they approach the character, and they don't treat this person, whether he was a human or not, when they shot him. It doesn't really seem like they care. It's this person was disposable because
they just want stuff out of his pockets. That's type of thing. And it's I've gotten into arguments with friends and because I am somebody who believes that that humans will destroy the earth, and science fiction writers have been writing about this for a good century or so, and as H.G. Wells and all these people have talked about how we'll destroy ourselves, and it's just in our nature to do it. So I don't think that we'll ever have that perfect utopia. And
no, I agree on that completely.
Yeah, there'll always be some sort of authority. If it's not military, it could be religious, and there'll be no secular way of looking at stuff, at some point. But
we are a power hungry species. We always want to have some form of control. And also there's the whole mentality of you give people the ability, with the ending of Rebirth. What I really wanted is you give people the okay to shoot first and not ask questions. And how is that abuse when there's not someone else around to tell them what to do? You've got this posse of guys driving around with beers and guns. They don't give a fuck. They don't care. They don't care. The character that is disposed of at the end of the film is as disposable as any other zombie in the movie. And it's because they don't care. They're not necessarily looking out to help people. They're happy that they have an excuse to go around and fire their guns off and kill zombies. I mean, it's fun for them. It's a good time.
Oh yeah. For them, it's like the Purge, but every day. They just go out and kill whoever they want. It doesn't matter. There's no consequences, to any of these actions. So, during the end credits, I noticed two names, George and Russo. Are those little kind of callbacks to the original?
Each. Yeah, well, George, the character that's the, the elderly character in the farmhouse, George, after George Romero, because George Romero was a progressive man into his older years, who had a lot of wisdom in him, and I thought that made sense. And um, each one of the posse members has a name that's inspired by someone who's involved in the original film.
Oh, nice. And then
Yeah,
will there be
yeah.
a rebirth? Will there be a sequel to this?
I've had that question a few times now, and I did not anticipate it, and I don't know. I don't. You know what? I'm an actor first and foremost, and I love filmmaking. This was a great experiment for me, an experience. I know what I would do differently with my next project, but I mostly really just am eager to get back in front of the camera for a time. That being said, am I open to directing again? Absolutely. It would just have to be the right project, and maybe it could be a rebirth too, but I really haven't explored that concept yet. But now that it's been brought up a few times, it is something that I've kind of like thought about. So we'll see. We'll see. I kind of have some ideas of maybe where I take it, but it's very early stages. But I don't know. Right now, I'm just aching to get back in front of the camera. I'm an actor, and at the end of the day, that's what I like to do most. And Rebirth is giving me some opportunities to pursue some other projects now, and that's what I really want to capitalize on.
Well, and that's a good segue because I just happen to have a film that you did act in. You are in Mother Krampus 2.
Mother Krampus 2.
Sleigh Ride. So this you helped produce, you acted in,
Yeah.
and you helped with the screenplay. So tell us a little bit about this. We got a little bit of time here.
Yeah, so Mother Krampus 2, I filmed it, I was in it a few years ago. I think it came out in 2018. I was involved with it, and then we went back and needed to do some additional reshoots, and at the time, they needed someone to direct second unit. So the opening 15 minutes and closing 15 minutes of that movie, I wrote and directed. Other than that, I play the drag queen Athena in it. Which was a very fun character to play, and I would love to play her again. But yeah, that movie, I mean, that had a lot of great memories. I met one of my best friends, Caitlin Newberry, who plays Victoria in that, and that movie is somehow became one of the projects of mine that just keeps coming back up. I guess because it's a Christmas movie. I mean, you have a holiday slasher, so you understand. Yeah, it's Caitlin. She's a wonderful human being, one of my favorite people. But thanks to the holiday aspect, every year I get more attention. So I'm very thankful for that movie.
Yeah, I actually just discovered her, and I am turning into a big fan of hers, and would like to work with her one day. Wink, wink.
Yeah, well, Caitlin,
so
she really is one of my best friends, so I will gladly get you in touch with her. I'm having her as a guest on my podcast. I do Dark Night of the Podcast with Troy Escamilla, who is another director. We analyze horror movies, and she's our next guest, Caitlin.
Oh,
so yeah, so she's on someone who I adore. She's in Atlanta right now, and she's been doing a ton of projects. She just did Widow's Point, and I mean, her IMDb is just booming. So I would highly recommend you keep your eye peeled for her upcoming projects because they keep getting better.
Widow's Point is one I did a review on that with Jonathan Moody, and we had never seen it. And I bought it. I found it at our place out here called Zia Records. And just because I'm friends with the director on Facebook, don't know him personally, but chatted with him a couple of times, and was completely surprised by it. Very, very surprised. And so we did a whole episode just on that movie. And now I see her popping up in other things, including Fear Lake and some other stuff. So yeah, she's definitely one to keep an eye on. So which then would bring us to where can people see Rebirth? Give me, because there will be the link, but where can they see it?
So it's hit a bunch of streaming platforms at this point, like Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Vudu. I'll give you the whole shebang of the different services to share, because it kind of keeps expanding. We're going to be going into a DVD release soon. So that's pretty exciting because I know a lot of people prefer that, and I'm a
Yeah.
purist that way too. I like my hard copies, I like my DVDs. So that's the next step. But right now, yeah, it's on DirecTV. I mean, all the standard streaming services that you can stream like in a pay-per-view situation. I'm really happy though with like the platforms thus far. It's getting a lot of love and attention, and so I'm very thankful people have been watching it. So I'll give you all of the links for that, and then also if people want to look at our official Facebook page, we update on that all the time. Anything new that hits, you'll see it right away there. Rebirth the movie on Facebook as well.
It's something while I was watching it is I was thinking like comic books or short stories or something like that you could very easily do off of this, getting some backstory of Ben and seeing what happens in the future, and doing stuff like that. It seems to open itself up to other avenues. Or are you thinking of anything like that?
Well, you know what? I am like I mentioned earlier, there's over 50 minutes of the movie that was cut, like actual, not damaged sequences, actuals, just scenes that we cut for time. But we're going to start dropping a few of our cut scenes just to kind of like culminate fresh attention. And I'm thinking of toying with the idea of a director's cut, just because there's a lot of things that people haven't seen and a lot of good. I mean, Caitlin actually has a role in the movie that got cut. Just a lot of stuff, just because it was so much of the film, and unfortunately it just was running too long. But I mean, I'm an artist. I would love to do a comic book. I don't know. My team and I were kind of on to our next thing already, which is a movie called Domestic, which is a body horror film, which is one of my favorite genres. And we're really focused on that. So I don't want to. I've spent so much time polishing Rebirth and finalizing it that I need to step back a little bit. But I could see something in the near future. I could see something. I'm really hungry to just A, get back in front of the camera, and B, move on to my next project that's not this one.
When you're saying body horror, kind of like Cronenberg body horror.
Yeah. Think almost, and in almost a way like elements of the Blob, like the 88, the Blob, the Thing, kind of, to a certain extent. I'm really excited for this project. It's great script. I'm in love with the script, and I'll have more news soon. It's kind of moving at a pretty fast pace, but we have some of our makeup effect designs and everything that we just released and everything, so that's pretty exciting. We'll have some news on that soon. We have a teaser trailer that dropped too, so I'll give you all that just to check out for you as well.
Oh yeah, please. It kind of sounds a little cosmic horror like.
With it's very surreal. Yeah, it's very surreal.
Okay, well, I look forward to that then. So that should be interesting.
Thank you.
Definitely different than from Rebirth.
Very, very. That was the goal. Rebirth was its own thing, and I had a great time doing it. But I want to flex my muscle and see what else I can do and play roles that are different as well. I loved that Adam was a depiction of a queer character, but I like playing different characters as well. And so the next character I'm playing is the complete opposite, and hopefully people believe it. So
now you're going to play Rambo.
Now I'm going to play Rambo. Now that I got out of my system, yeah.
All right. Well, we're roughly at the 2-hour mark. So
perfect.
If there's anything else you would like to say or promote or anything like that, please
do. Yeah, guys, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on here, and thank you to everyone who listened for taking the time to listen to this. If you want to follow me on social media, I go by The Scream Queer, Instagram, Twitter, all the basics. That's my go-to. I have plenty of things I'm working on right now, but I also have a bunch of things out that you can, if you enjoy Rebirth, check out Mother Krampus 2 Sleigh Ride. Check out American Poltergeist, The Curse of Lilith Ratchet. I have plenty of films out right now that you can view my work and decide whether or not you want to pursue following me further. Other than that, like I said, I'm on social media a lot, so feel free to follow me and listen to Dark Night of the Podcast. That's my weekly podcast with Victoria Scamilla, where we analyze classic horror movies, and everything I do is horror movies. So if that's what you like, you'll probably get along with me fine.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out. So, All right. So, okay. Well,
Thank
thanks
you.
everybody for joining us. I appreciate it. And thank you for being here. And I guess that's it. So we'll
Thank
wrap this
you.
up. And I will see you
This was
guys
great.
on the next one. It was really fun. I appreciate it. So, especially with me being such a big fan of this, it's great to meet you. So, and you, I definitely want to work
I
with
really
too.
appreciate it, man.
You
Truly.
know, I would love to be able to do something.
Yeah, well, let's keep in touch.
So we will.
Seriously, like I appreciate it, and social media has proven to be the best tool of all for meeting other people with similar interests and similar passions. So, thank you. I'm happy that we've connected through this, and I'm sure that this is just the beginning of our getting to know each other, and our future
Awesome.
of getting to know each other further. Yeah,
Perfect.
man.
I appreciate
All
that.
right, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Where's my hand? There we go. I will see you later. Bye.
Bye.